Okay, hello everybody, and I'd like to welcome Maria onto the podcast. Maria, can you say your last name because I'm going to say it wrong?
Well, there's two ways of saying it. The American way is Gehrke. The German
Gehrke?
way is Gehrke.
Gehrke. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. But I'd like to just introduce you. You are a multifaceted watercolor artist and IT professional. You bridge the gap between technology and art with a focus on nature and mindfulness. You moved from Germany to Wisconsin in 2007, and you've found inspiration in nature and your personal mindfulness journey, leading to the creation of your unique art series like Windows to Nature and Mini Portals to Tranquility. These have culminated in your 2023 project, Your Portal to Your Refuge, a collaborative art experience designed to manifest tranquil spaces for your clients. So we'll link to all of this. We'll get into this in the conversation. But in addition to all of that, you also co-founded a podcast in 2021, the Becoming Mindful podcast. And again, we'll share links to that as well, aiming to explore and share your mindfulness journey with a broader audience and encourage others on this path. You live a busy life with a small child, a husband, 2 dogs, and your work embodies your commitment to mindfulness, creativity, and compassion. Did I get all of that right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And I also know you through Fearless Living Academy.
Yes.
You've been a member there for a little while as well, and putting some beautiful things into that space and working with others. And so that's actually how I got to know you, and really honored to have you here in the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
Let's see. So, you could see in that bio that I just shared about Maria, there's a lot to explore here. And so I think I'd like to start with art. Okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
As you know, this season is about creativity and creating in all kinds of ways, but art is a very it's one of the ways that people's minds go to when we talk about creativity. Mm-hmm. And so it would really be really cool to explore that. Before we start recording, you said that you've been doing art for most of your life. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Was it like were you just always into it? Like,
Yeah.
what's your journey been like as an artist?
I've definitely, as a child, like early on, as far as I can remember, always loved, creating, drawing, crafting, crochet, all kinds of stuff that's, all creative. And I did some more visual art in high school. And then, it kind of faded a little bit. I think it was mostly, the pressure of, doing something sensible with your life. I think that's one of the things that got me a little bit away from my art path.
Sure.
Kind of the family or the environment not seeing as much of the value in it, which is sad, but, that's... if you're a teenager or a young adult in college, that's definitely a big influence on you, right? You haven't really found your own voice in your own ways yet. And then 2017, I had my daughter, and that was quite a big shift for me, just overall. I mean, my life changed, my inner world changed, everything was very different. And this is also, I think this is also where my mindfulness journey started, really, because I was looking into gentle parenting and mindful parenting. And in 2019, I really started back into creating or painting and drawing regularly. And
What got you back into it?
I don't really know. It just kind of started. I think I went to a figure drawing session, and then it just kind of like this joy, that I remembered that I had, and I just wanted to get back into it. And then it developed from there. Yeah.
Okay, there's a number of things that I want to touch on that you touched on already, which is the first one is you were kind of called to art in as a young kid, and was there someone who encouraged you? Like someone said, "Oh, that's amazing," or like just really encouraged your creativity and just allowed you to like feel like you had permission to create in that way?
Yeah, I think definitely my art teacher at the time, and my family too. My mother is also, she also paints. She doesn't call herself an artist, but I think she is. But I have a very different definition of who is an artist. Maybe we can touch on that too. But actually, all of my family. Yeah, so for me personally, there's always this discussion about what is art and who can call themselves an artist. You have to go to art school or not, and you have to be good at it. And personally, I think everyone is an artist. If you make art, if you make anything that is art, be it a painting or music, singing or crafting, I think you're an artist. If you do anything creative, that's kind of an art. You're an artist. That's
I love that.
How I feel.
Not needing a lot of gatekeeping, huh?
No,
like you're an artist and you're not.
No, and I think that's the same with like what's good art. For me, it's so personal. Quantifying it, yes, of course you can say the technical skills, right? You can value someone for their technical skills and give them appreciation for it, because it's a lot of hard work to get really good at something like that. But I think that's the art component. It's like if you feel something, if it connects to you, if it somehow talks to something inside of you, or just generally if it's meant to be art. If someone makes something and they think it's art, then it's art.
I love that. It's so like inclusive, just like, yes, you're an artist too. If you're making anything and you think it's art, you're an artist. So there was this early kind of like encouragement or like a space where you could be creative and create art. But what you mentioned later in your either late teens or early adulthood, you might have received, it sounds like you might have received messages, not just you. I would assume that a lot of people who want to do something creative receive these messages like, that's not, maybe that's not practical, or that's not going to make a living, or tell me what what that was like.
Interestingly, the message that art is, the breadless, what is it called in German? There's a saying, brotlose Kunst, which means like breadless art, which means you can't make a living with it, right? And I think just the family and the environment, teachers, counselors, peers, I think anyone, especially I think in Germany, is very focused on doing something that's solid, that's sensible, right? That's logical, that you can come to a stable way of living or a stable point in your life.
Right.
And interestingly, that message pretty much came from the same people that encouraged me when I was a child in art. So it's kind of this shift from it's okay for children, right? And it's wonderful. And it's like, oh, you're so creative and it's so awesome. And then once you become an adult and supposed to go into the world and make your own way, then it's like, oh, this is probably not, you can do that as a hobby maybe, but focus on, your, so I actually went into a business major, which is
really?
and that morphed a little bit into a business and engineering combination major. So there's like a special major in Germany that's like a combination between engineering and business to be kind of like a liaison between the two, right? And that, because of my exchange program and the school here in Milwaukee not having that course or that major, morphed into more of an IT background, and that's how I also ended up in IT. So completely like more technical, more logical. Now, I would say though, there are creative elements to that profession as well, because you have to, do creative problem solving and things like that. So focus on that, right? And so I went to the total left brain, everything, away from, and I think that like, I don't know why that also took me away from the art. I think it might also been just, the young adult changes in what people do, go to parties and stuff like that, and instead of, doing art as a hobbies like that.
Was there ever like a feeling like, like a disappointment that you can't pursue art, that it's not sensible and practical?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it wasn't really clear for me earlier. I think I kind of suppressed it. I wasn't really thinking about it as much. But it definitely became clear to me after I had my child. And I think it's just the whole perspective shift. Once you have your own child, that the child will grow up and have their own life and opportunities, and I think that's where it really came back up, where I'm like, okay, if I would have done it again, maybe I would have chosen art instead. Now, I'm not unhappy with where I am with my IT job. I do like my job, and I appreciate I appreciate it. I mean, there is lots of interesting and exciting things to do, and I am also it's kind of like challenges me, or it's kind of like an interesting thing to like find these solutions, or technical stuff was always interesting for me too. So so
okay. Well, thanks for like sharing some of that. The other piece that I wanted to touch on was that you've mentioned this a couple times now. When you had your daughter, something shifted for you, a perspective shift, and you talked a little bit about it, but you also earlier said like your inner world changed.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd like to like hear more about that. What happened there?
I think the biggest thing was like where my priorities are, what's important to me in life, relationships, versus what it was before. I think it went a little bit more intangible. What do I really want out of life? And it became less and more. So there was less desire for whatever, the house, the whatever, that like kind of died off. And it's more of this, like a content life with people that I love, and share the time with people that I love, and with things that I love to do, and connect to the world, the universe, the nature, obviously, I I'm hesitant to say happy because I think a lot of the times happy has this connotation of bliss, which that's not you can't achieve that every moment of your life. It's just impossible. So I would probably seek a content life.
Can you make a connection to me? So I get you had your daughter, something that caused something to shift, and then the shift is what you talked about. But like,
how that happened?
Yeah,
that's
how
a
did it
good
happen?
question. Maybe it was hormonal. I don't know. Just it's a joke, but
Could be.
I think it once you bring a life into the world, that's just a big thing. I feel like the responsibility maybe also for the child, and a good life for her, and wanting to experience life, and maybe it's also like kind of maybe it's also just like an own mortality thing where you're like, okay, getting older, I think how people have like midlife crises, but when you have a child, I think that's kind of like that too, where you just everything
That makes
you're
sense.
reevaluating what is really important in your life at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so continuing the journey with art, and I definitely want to talk about the podcast and other things that you'd like to explore. But continuing with the art, you have gotten into these different collaborative and what was it, multimodality type art projects, and I'd love just to hear more about that, like the growth in your art in that direction.
Sure. So I think it started with when I started the podcast and looking into mindfulness, it felt natural that it would seep into my art, right? Mindfulness. And especially the connection with nature, because for me, being outside or being in nature is extremely, it's like a easy trigger to be mindful in some way. So it started out with a project that I called Windows to Nature, where I wanted to create a more immersive feeling. So instead of just painting a landscape, I also painted a window frame around it, so you kind of get this feeling of you're looking through your window and there is the nature, right? You can open it, you're like right there. It's right next to you. So that was step one. And then I was also thinking about, commission work, and how that's a collaborative approach, because I was trying to figure out, what people long for. I think it started out trying to figure out what other landscapes I should paint for my windows, and what is something that people would love to see out of their window. And so I had some different ideas from people on social media that follow me and that I interact with, and that brought me the idea that, well, why can't we create this together, but not just like a commission where you tell me, okay, I want this, right? But it's like we both find what this is together.
Interesting.
And then I'm like, okay, but what would it make it really cool is if we had a session. So that's how I came up with this visualization session that's part of the art experience. I call this Venture Through Your Portal session. So essentially it's a meditation. It's a visualization meditation to go to a safe place in your head. You're like imagining going there. And I think it's a known meditation. They utilize that in therapy, to create a safe space where, if people are dealing with trauma, so they have a space where they can go to and they feel safe and nothing can get to them. But also, I wanted it to be something where you can just be relaxed and kind of like get away for just a moment, right? Just breathe, like, this is great. And the my last client that I just had a visualization session on Monday with, she actually told me that she did something like that as a course when she was pregnant, like for a pregnancy meditation type thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now it wasn't together with someone. It wasn't interactive. It was, like a exercise or like a recording. So the session that I had is we both do it together. So I lead them to this place, and once you're there, you can explore it. But I also ask questions to like really get you to really notice everything, right? How it feels, like all the feelings on your skin or whatever, what you imagine, right, at that place. Warm, cold, and then just also how your body feels if you imagine yourself there, and if you touch things around you, you can smell, if you smell something. So go like all the senses, involving all the senses, and then also going through the details of the exact scenery, because I need that then to take that and make my own rendition of their space. So then I make a painting. So that's
based on what
what they have
respond to those
described. Yes,
questions.
what they have described in their place.
I love that.
Yeah, and I did. There's two levels of this. The one I'm doing right now is a smaller version where I then just paint the painting, and then there's a bigger version where I make a really like a bigger painting. And in the process, because it takes a little bit longer, I make like little sketches. Those are like postcards. So I send like little postcards to the customer. So it's kind of more of a connection. But what I really want to do there is create this connection for them to the safe space, so that they can go there very easily. And like the painting in the end, obviously it's a painting, so it's nice to have in your home, right? It's a beautiful decoration, but that's more of like they can immediately go back to that session, right? Because it's kind of like a trigger, like a hook that for your memory to go back to that experience that you had in the session.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm doing lately.
Love that. How okay, I have a bunch of questions now. So, how has that been in terms of how it's been received by people? Like not just the visualization meditation, but actually like getting the art from you. Has that had an impact that you were hoping to have? Have anything surprised you about that?
Yeah, I think so far I've had really good feedback, like on both of it, and it seemed like it really helped them do what I hope it to do.
Okay.
So from the feedback I've heard that it was easy to I was able to go back there, and also in the session, like just this feeling that they expressed, that they felt really calm and amazing, and that they could take that out back into their life then after. So yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah, and good feedback. And it's so funny because when I do the session, before the session, I'm like a little bit nervous, and meeting the person, because we do like a little bit of introduction before, but at the end for me it's also great. Like I just because I can absorb that it's question. Like they're reflecting all these feelings back to me, and I also feel like this is so great, and I just feel great. Yeah.
What's it like going into that meditation with them, where you're guiding them but also experiencing this safe space for them, with them? What's that like for you?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I don't know. It's hard to. It's like joy. It's just joy. Like seeing this reaction, or seeing the impact that this has on people. It just makes me so happy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, a lot of artists create in solitude by themselves. And then like, hopefully in the future you put that work out there and it has some kind of impact on someone. Yeah, but you don't know what that's going to be. And so you're developing it kind of in this, echo chamber, like isolated from everybody else. But you're bringing that impact and that experience with others into the creation process itself. And so I'm sure you've had both experiences, and I'm wondering like, what that's like for you to like go from solitude to actually doing it with like creating your art with someone else.
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience. I think both are absolutely valid. I think, from an artist's perspective, if you do the art with yourself, you're also doing it for yourself, because sometimes there's things, trauma or certain emotions that you need to process, and you want to bring that into your art. Or just, for the creative process, because, once you are doing the creative act, you're in the flow. Like it's this kind of a mindfulness exercise in a way as well, right? For yourself. And then it might have an impact on someone in the future, right? But that's not really why you're doing it at that moment. It's more of a, and that's cool too. I mean, if you think about meditation and things like that, you do that for yourself, right? You do that in solitude, but doing a creative exercise as like a collaborative exercise is fantastic. It's different though. It's just a completely different approach, and I think the painting overall would probably have a bigger meaning to the person, but I don't think that if you make art because you feel compelled to make art, or something inside of you that you need to bring to the paper or wherever into the song that you're making, that's not really the goal then, right? It's more about yourself. So, but both are obviously completely valid.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to move to the mindfulness journey and podcast.
Okay.
But before I do that, is there anything else that I'm missing here in this area that you really want to like talk about?
No, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a powerful thing. And, actually, before we move on, speaking to what you just shared with us, I heard in both of those the solo experience of doing it for yourself, and it's something of you like creating your own experience and exploring your own inner world. But then doing that with someone else is exploring an inner world with the two of you. Like what you're speaking to is like a transformative experience of art in both cases, right? And I just really wanted to acknowledge that you're creating, each of those that you spoke about is it's creating some kind of transformation. Like it could be therapy for yourself, stuff that you're processing, right? And a lot more. But I just wanted to like acknowledge that. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's why art therapy exists, right?
Beautiful. Okay, so let's go to the mindfulness journey, because it sounds like the mindfulness journey preceded the podcast and led to it.
Right.
So can you start with the mindfulness journey? Like what started that for you? What's that been like? And then how did it lead to the podcast?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I believe the mindfulness journey was also started with the birth of my kid, or with having a child, everything.
It's a big
thing.
For
yeah,
you.
It really was. And I think it started with looking into mindful parenting. The reason I was interested in that is that, both my husband and I, there's certain things, that we didn't enjoy in our childhood. And trying to kind of heal from that, but also making sure that, we don't hand on anything to the child, right?
Right.
Because, yeah. So that was, I think, the biggest part. And, looking into different gentle parenting, mindful parenting, and specifically, I don't know if you know him, Dan Siegel.
I wouldn't say I'm that knowledgeable, but yeah.
Yeah, so he wrote a couple of books around child development and parenting, as well as for adults, and he is a neuroscientist, I believe, who explored the mindfulness part with that. So it's kind of like the brain side of mindfulness, which is very interesting. And he was exploring kind of the development of the child and how we react to certain things, and the emotional regulation and everything around that. So I think that was the first one. And my friend, who is the other co-host, she went on her own journey, which started training as a meditation and yoga teacher. So that she did that, and she was also very much into environmental and mindfulness topics. They even started living in a tiny house for a while, and we were talking about it. We were just sharing, and really said we want to explore this more. And I don't know, someone said we should have a podcast. And and then I think the biggest reason for the podcast is also to create a space where we can regularly talk about this, where we can, it's also a tool for accountability, so you don't lose track of it. You regularly explore things mindful, and we decided to call it Becoming Mindful, because it's about our journey and hopefully helpful for others that are on that journey as well, and where we can talk about our experiences, or how things change too, because you learn new things and you revise other older opinions. And one of the important things that we thought too was we wanted to explore the intersectionality of mindfulness with all other things in life, especially things that are important to someone that's a woman, for example, like feminism, also with climate topics, with just general social things, humans, topics that are important for humans, I guess. So, and daily life, of course.
Amazing. What's that been like? So there's, talking about the creative process, you've talked about, doing that with your art and doing that art with others. But here you are creating a podcast. It's a very different medium than your other art, and with someone else. Well, actually, one thing I noticed is that this is, a podcast could be like, I'm creating this for others, but I also heard in there's a lot of we're creating this for ourselves, for our own journey and accountability and growth. And hopefully someone else will get something out of this too, right. But that's not necessarily the entire point.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. I think I would equate that to when I talked about, the solo versus the communal experience. And I think the podcast started more as that solo, even so we're two people, but like for
Sure.
us, more for us. And
Yeah.
I think we have in our back of our minds that we want to expand it to something that includes others, but it started definitely out more of like for us.
Yeah.
Like a work group.
Yeah, I get that. Beautiful. And then, so what's that been like? Just creating something for yourself, but with another person.
Yeah.
How's that creative process been for you?
Yeah, it's been great. It's also a great learning for how to, collaborate with someone on something like that. You have different styles and, just note taking even. And, how do you want to do this? Do you want to have a detailed script or not? And so it was very interesting from that perspective. And I really loved also that it challenged us to find, topics that we haven't really looked at yet. So something that is, challenge our own research to really go into things and find out more and learn more about mindfulness and, and also bringing it more into our lives, because you want to apply those things or, new practices and, just being more aware in your life. And that's...
I love that. What I love about that is that you're not just using the podcast as a medium to like share what you already know, but to explore what you don't know.
Yeah, we also did a few book reviews. So we chose a book to read, and then we read it, and then we talked about it on the podcast. So we did, for example, an example is we did a book from Thich Nhat Hanh, which one was that? The Art of Living, I think. And we did, which I really loved, the Braiding Sweetgrass. I don't know if you've read that before, but that is an amazing book.
I know of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
Yeah. So
amazing.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. And we even had a few interview guests as well to bring like outside perspective and to discuss it as well. So.
Oh, I love that. I'd love to check out those book reviews. In those episodes. Let's see. I think I'm curious about anything that comes up for you that makes maybe a blocker or fears or anything like that as we look at the podcast, but also your more visual art. So like, you mentioned before you get on a call with one of these people you're collaborating with and leading, like there might be a little bit of shakiness. And I'm wondering like, people might get the impression that you have no fears and this is just all easy and no struggles at all. But I'm wondering if you could let us in and see if there are anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I, thinking about the podcast, for example, I think there's definitely always some self-doubt, or there's also sometimes worry about communication skills, I guess, so some of those, I guess it's a fear of failure that comes up, right? Kind of making a fool of yourself. Or even just thinking, miscommunication, worry of miscommunication, even just with my podcast partner, about certain things. And I think it also is like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of like, is this something that's even interesting or worthy? And I think that comes in both art and the podcast. Kind of like who am I to do this, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Am I even good enough for that? Or will people get anything out of it? And I don't know, like, the feeling of you're, I don't know, you're doing something that you're full of yourself or something like that.
I totally get that. And the interesting thing is, like, you don't have to expose yourself to those fears. You could just not do the art or the podcast.
Right.
But you are, and so it's like those are going to surface. You're exposing yourself to those kinds of risks of those fears, and I'm wondering, like, what makes that worthwhile to you, and then how do you work with those fears when they do come up?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely feel those fears, and they are definitely blocking in certain ways too. Be it procrastination or distracting myself, or those things come up.
Sure.
Not posting something if I wanted to, share more, so more people can be reached, for example. How do I deal with them? I think, I've done a few of your uncertainty challenges, and I really like that as a tool, and to like lean into that a little bit more. So that has helped tremendously.
I'll just interrupt you if that's
Yeah,
okay. Just because I think not everybody knows what that is. It's in Fearless Living Academy. And every month we have a new, basically like a 4-week challenge where you can join in with others, be a part of a group, and then take on something that's giving you uncertainty, and then actually like commit yourself to practicing with that. And so I love that structure has helped you to like face some of these fears, because I really get, if you're able to do that, you're able to like create your art.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that.
and I think the other thing is, like, once it's set up, once I make a date for, we're gonna record this episode now, or I'm gonna have this visualization session. There's this commitment too, or this accountability that, well, I can't let them down either, right? So it's the importance of the person to me, or maybe that's a people pleaser thing, but it helps me.
No,
You know,
use it.
sometimes it helps. So you can also sometimes use
Yeah.
that to help yourself get over this. I really don't want to do this, but no, I'm not going to cancel, because then I would be letting them down. So
Yeah. People might judge themselves for using that kind of like, I'm going to show up because there's another person there, but I say that's a human thing to want to show up for another
right.
person.
Well,
I
and
say
they deserve
use it, right?
that too. I can't. That's a thing too. I mean, they deserve at least my, commitment to them.
Yeah. Okay, so committing to someone else helps you to show up despite those fears. Anything else that's helped you to like work with those fears?
I think for the art, and actually also for the podcast, is kind of like remembering why I want to do this, or what's at stake, kind of like what. Yeah. And then once it happens, and you collect positive reinforcement, let's say it this way, over time as well, the more you do it. Because every podcast episode, I might be nervous, I might be, I don't want to do this, can I do something else? But once I do the episode, I'm excited, we have this amazing conversation, and after the episode I'm just elated, and it was great. I loved it.
Amazing.
And then that helps for the next round and the next round, and the same with the art. Like you have one visualization session where you're like a little nervous maybe before, or you start one artwork, and artwork is, visual artwork, especially with watercolors, which I work mostly at, it has this phase where it just looks ugly. It just looks like this is like the ugliest thing, and it's no. And then you have to kind of trust the process. So it's like something that comes with the territory, right? So then once you're done, though, every time you finished another artwork, you have, something there that, you can use and say, hey, but, I know you're worried, but remember last time it worked out.
I love that. It's like a building of self-trust and self-confidence.
Right.
Just through repeated practice.
That's it.
Repeated action.
Yes.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Another topic that you've touched on that I really want to come back to, you've talked about parenting, and I know, we're talking about creating, but parenting is creating. So I really want to hear a little bit more about your journey. You talked about gentle parenting and mindful parenting. I'd love to just hear a little bit for maybe, something that a new parent might want to hear who's interested in these topics. Like anything that you've been learning. Really glad that you learned from different books and bringing it into your parenting. Is there anything you want to share about that topic?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is definitely creating too, because you're creating an environment, right, for the child, a safe environment for the child to grow up in and to learn, the opportunity to learn and be safe and not have to worry about things that a child shouldn't worry about, right? And I think the biggest piece I would say about mindful and gentle parenting is looking at the child as a person. They're the full person, even so they may not have as much experience in life as you do because they just don't have the years, but they're still a person, right? They are still a person, and especially they also are a person that doesn't have a fully developed brain, right? So, trying to nurture the growth and safety and love and, anything that you're struggling with, they're going to probably struggle with even more, thinking about like emotional regulation. And if you think of, if you would cut your spouse slack for it, then you have to even cut more slack for your child because they're just a child, right? They're just learning yet. And I feel that a lot of the practices that we learn in mindfulness training and, things like emotional regulation and, anything that we learn, right? With the resistance and, finding the joy and failure and, everything that all applies to children as well. And if you can bring that to them early, then they have something that they can, it's like a toolbox, right? Something they can use when life gets harder, inevitably, because they're going to be an adult, right? So something they can,
Absolutely.
like a foundation. And that's like,
So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll let you finish.
I don't know what I was going to say anymore.
My bad.
No problem.
But so you mentioned emotional regulation, and I think it's such an important topic with parenting, but also as adults. I think a lot of us weren't actually taught that as kids, and we're still trying to learn that, no matter how old we are. And it helps so much with the creative pursuit of facing some of these fears that you mentioned. So if we could learn emotional regulation, we can deal with all of these fears that are coming up. And I'm wondering, maybe you can share with us a little bit about how you've been helping your daughter learn that.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest pieces is the reactivity as a parent as well. And that's, as you said, most of us have not been taught this. And so it's kind of a reparenting of myself as well. So you don't quickly jump into, you getting upset or something with your child. So there's like, that pause, that breathing. So that's one of the things I do with her too. If she gets too excited or something is going on, we're like, hey, let's just pause for a second, 3 deep breaths. Right? There's a cute one that is the hot chocolate breathing. So you're like, you sniff your chocolate and then you blow it because it's hot. So that's kind of like a regulation. So you kind of stop the pause and then before you react. Somewhere I read too, like it's like count to 10 or something like that, because from a brain perspective, your upper brain is not engaged when you're emotional. So, you have this reaction that you kind of have to wait. So you don't do the fight, flight, what is it? Fight, flight, freeze.
Freeze.
Something like that, yeah. So you kind of like go through that. So that's definitely breathing helps. And one of the big ones is to just understanding emotions. Just like, how do you feel right now? If you're upset, I see you're upset. Well, I think you're upset. Do you feel upset? There's things like, emotion charts where you have like the little faces. Just naming it. Naming how you feel. Like saying it out loud. Versus, and then another exercise that we do is, if you're angry or upset, you can kind of visualize it as, like a storm, or like a rain cloud. And then, trying to be like, okay, what if I close the window and I just watch the storm? Watch the little rain cloud just go by, So that's kind of
amazing.
So do some of those mindfulness exercises. But in general, one of the big questions I always ask myself when something is going on is this really important? Like, do I really need to, like, do I really need to react to this? Like, is it so immediate and that there's some reaction is needed right away? It's not an emergency. So that's kind of like, because we love to react quickly, like, oh no, God, or something like this, and then,
we don't always have that perspective when we're like caught up in it, right? So is it important? Gives you that.
Is it really an emergency?
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. That I really, I know that parenting isn't necessarily the normal topic of creativity, but actually I really do believe everything with parenting is relevant to what we're talking about here. And you could see emotional regulation and the things you shared, mindfulness and breathing and just observing and getting to know your emotions and even just allowing yourself to feel all of those things. Such a powerful thing. I love that you're doing that for your daughter. What a huge gift.
Well, and for myself too. I'm doing it for myself as well.
Reparenting yourself.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're out of time.
Okay, yes.
We could dive in. We could talk all day. I think we have a lot of things to talk about, but what you've shared with us has been a huge gift. So I just want to say thank you, Maria, for coming onto the podcast. And sharing a bit about your journey, but also like what you're creating in the world with your daughter in this podcast, with your own journey, and then in collaboration with others. Really, really gorgeous. work,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate you sharing all of it with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk about it. And I really love your work as well, which is
Thank
why
you.
I joined Fearless Living Academy. And this podcast has been really cool as well. I'm very happy to be here and share this.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, thank you, Maria. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching. I will talk to you all later.